Well, my name is Dr. Richard Kaul, and you know, I'm sure some of you watching this video have seen other videos that I've put together and produced to try and explain different aspects of my life, and in some of the videos, more peripherally, the details surrounding the suspension of my medical license in the state of New Jersey. What I haven't done, however, and what I'm doing this for, is to provide more detail as to the events leading up to and surrounding the case. I have a lot of friends and family in different parts of the world who ask me about the case, and some of them are somewhat confused as to why the New Jersey Medical Board, after so many years, would suspend my license. And, you know, I try to explain the circumstances to people, but I thought the most effective way would be for me to do a video and to tell the story, hopefully once and for all, so that anybody who's interested in it could watch this video and really get a sense of what went on. And I have a pile of papers which I'm going to use as points of reference as I talk about what went on or has gone on since June 2012. And the reason that I'm using them and that they will appear as part of the video is so that people can take their own time to watch the video and to read the documents so that they can assure themselves that they have a complete understanding of what went on. So I'd like to start by just saying, or giving a little bit of background on my education and my training. I went to medical school in London at the Royal Free, and I graduated medical school in 1988. I underwent approximately 7 to 8 years of postgraduate training in the United States and the United Kingdom in the fields of general surgery, anesthesiology, and interventional pain. I returned to the United States in 2001, and from 2001 to 2012, I developed, you know, I should say, a very successful practice in the field of minimally invasive spine surgery. I was, in fact, the first doctor in 2005 to perform an outpatient lumbar interbody fusion. And it's a long term, but it's a specific type of operation for patients with low back pain. But I was able to do it in a surgical center and on a same-day basis, which was the first time that a procedure like that had ever been performed. I performed that surgery in a surgical center that I had opened up in 2011, and it was the Pompton Lakes, or rather it was the NJSR Surgical Center, which was in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey. And it was a Medicare certified, AAA accredited facility. And in the United States, Medicare certification is the highest form of accreditation that a surgical facility can obtain. And I obtained that for my facility, and that was where the procedure was performed. Unfortunately, and in my opinion, because the practice had become so successful, I was having patients referred to me not only from all around the country, but from overseas. It aroused, what I should say, maybe some envy, some jealousy in some of my local competitors. And the case, and this is always a surprise when I discuss this with people who are close to me, it became a political case. Now, you know, I had never chosen to go into politics. I had chosen medicine as a career, but I was unfortunately dragged into a political feud involving the current governor of this state, Mr. Christie. And what unfortunately happened was that a group of local neurosurgeons donated a significant amount of money to Mr. Christie. And whilst I was going through this battle, trying to bring the public's attention to what went on, I put together a small chart, which will be on the video. And this chart makes connections between the parties involved. And the way that I was able to gather the information was through talking to a lot of doctors in the state of New Jersey who came to me saying that they thought it was a terrible thing that the board had suspended my license, and then proceeded to tell me how and why these things went on. And very simply put, it was, as I just said, a case of political corruption. Mr. Christie received money from these neurosurgeons, and the understanding was that he would instruct the medical board to suspend my license. That occurred in June 2012. And
you can prove that? How can you prove the money from?
Through the testimony of the people that came to see me. So should there ever be a court case and the proceedings end up in either state or federal court, those people will be subpoenaed and they will be asked to repeat what they said to me. Around this time, there was, of course, and it seemed to me a very orchestrated thing, a lot of negative publicity, where the local press went haywire, talking about what an awful doctor I was and how I'd done a terrible job with patients. But when in fact my name is looked up on the Division of Consumer Affairs, which controls the medical board, and a document comes up and it says, in regards to my medical practice, it says the number of medical malpractice payments paid on behalf of this practitioner within the past 5 years is below average for this speciality. So there was a lot of misinformation and disinformation that was being put out to assassinate my character and my reputation. A lot of it was untruthful, and it was, in some cases, quite defamatory, which again is one of the reasons why I felt it necessary to do this video. Within this pile of documents, I also have a copy of my curriculum vitae, which includes a list of all of the diplomas and credentials that I obtained over the years, training or to train me in the field of minimally invasive spine surgery. And I'm not going to read them all out because the viewers can see this for themselves. But I'm sure what they will conclude is that I have been extensively trained in the field of minimally invasive spine surgery. And not only that, I myself have actually taught many other physicians the skills and the techniques but anyway, as I was saying, within this bundle of documents is a copy of my curriculum vitae and all of the diplomas and certificates that I have attained over the years in the field of minimally invasive spine surgery. And I'm not going to go through and read every one because the viewer can see it for themselves. But I'm sure that when they do, they will realize how well trained I am in this particular field. When my license was suspended, it was a complete shock. I had no idea that it was going to happen. It happened completely out of the blue, with no warning. And at the time that it occurred, one of the ways that I felt able to communicate what was going on was to write about what I felt was at the heart of the issue, which I referred to as the spine turf wars, which I've talked about before, but I'll briefly mention now. It was a battle, a medical professional battle between the neurosurgeons and the interventional pain physicians, of which I am one. And it was a battle over who was qualified to perform certain spine procedures. And because I, as an interventional pain physician, had performed the first outpatient lumbar interbody fusion and had developed the technique to do so, the neurosurgeons felt aggrieved and they felt threatened. And I wrote a piece talking about the medicine of what went on. And again, this piece will be on the video, so people can read it at their leisure. But essentially, it talks about the sensible economic model that I had developed. I had taken a procedure that used to be performed only in hospitals and was an extremely expensive procedure. I had taken it into an outpatient setting and cut the cost by 70%. I talked earlier about how the case had become extremely political. In fact, it probably was a political case. It never really became one. And I've referred to the current governor of this state, Mr. Christie, who, in my opinion, was at the center of this. Maybe not at the center, but was a significant part of this. Without his input or effect or influence on the medical board, my license would not have been suspended. Now, as some of you will or won't know, he is currently under investigation by the federal government in relationship to what's called the bridgegate scandal. In my opinion, the man, and I've written about this openly, I've expressed it openly before, and I'll say it again, I do not think he has the character to be the president of America. The local press have talked about a number of stories that Mr. Christie has been involved in. And again, there's an article that came out in the Star Ledger approximately a year ago, not in relationship to my case, but in relationship to an attorney by the name of Bennett Barlin. And again, people can read this story, but the title of the story is A Cover-Up for a Christie Ally. And really what it talks about, again, is political corruption. And unfortunately, it's another example of the kind of corruption that the Christie administration has engaged in since it's been in office in the state of New Jersey. Now, throughout the proceedings, I've been fortunate enough to have the support of many of my patients and many of my physician colleagues who have written to the governor. They've written letters to the newspaper. And in particular, it was one of my patients, a gentleman by the name of Kaul, who wrote a very eloquent letter to the Bergen Record, which is one of the local newspapers in New Jersey. And in the letter, he talks about his experience with me, having been a patient of mine, his opinion of my clinical skills, and his opinion of what has gone on with regards to the suspension of my license. And as with all of these documents, and I'll mention it again, they will all be on the video for the viewers to read. After my license was suspended, the case was referred to what's called the Office of Administrative Law. It's a rather unique New Jersey institution. It's not a formal court of law. It's more tribunal. It's headed up by what I refer to as administrative judges. They're not what one would consider to be of the same level as the superior court judges, And during this case, a lot of information was presented. It was a 7-week-long hearing, and there was a significant amount of evidence presented. And one of the issues that the Attorney General, Doreen Hafner, made for the state of New Jersey was that I had failed to obtain a consent form from one of the patients that I had operated on, whose initials are GH. Now, the consent form, which I have in my hands here, was signed on the particular date that the patient had the surgery. It was presented to the court, but yet the judge, Howard Solomon, in his ruling, completely ignored this particular issue. Now, people may ask why. And although it's hard to believe that this kind of a, I mean, I hate to use this word, conspiracy, prejudging occurred, that's the only conclusion that one can reasonably come to when one looks at the fact that all of this evidence was presented, and yet the ruling from Judge Solomon was so one-sided. In the many years that I've been in New Jersey, building my practice and building the surgical center, I have always obtained or retained the advice of attorneys. I've always had counsel. I've always had clinical consultants to guide me on every step to make sure that I was complying not only with the letter of the law, but with the spirit of the law. And one of the attorneys, who I consider extremely competent, that I used over the many years, is an attorney by the name of Jeffrey Randolph, who specializes in healthcare law. Now, in the United States, healthcare law is a relatively complex arena of law. And I have in front of me a letter that's dated August the 30th, 2012, that Mr. Randolph had sent to another attorney, in which he explains the process that he went through in contacting the medical board before I established and opened my surgical center. And his final paragraph, which I find to be quite telling, and I'm going to quote this. He says, "To date, the alternative privileging regulations have not been substantively amended and do not expressly cover minimally invasive spine surgery nor pain management, the two specialities practiced by Dr. Kaul at NJSR Surgical Center. Until the regulations are amended to expressly cover these specialities and provide notice to the licensees of their inclusion and the necessity to obtain alternative privileges, I am at a loss as to how the medical board can take the position that Dr. Kaul must obtain alternative privileges to perform these procedures at NJSR Surgical Center." So my attorney, who guided me through the process, he himself was completely confused as to how the medical board could take my license legitimately. As I move forward through this collection of documents, the next document that I come to, which I think is really of great relevance to my case, is a list of signatures from patients in the country and all over the world. Patients' families. And again, the viewers will be able to look at this list themselves. But the point of this document is to demonstrate the support that I have had, and have been fortunate to have had, from many patients, many doctors, and their friends and family, who, with the limited knowledge that they've had of the case, but knowledge about me, have felt aggrieved enough to have put their names to a petition. That petition, which contained 1,000 signatures, was sent to the office of Governor Christie. It was sent to his home address. Mr. Christie did nothing with that petition. He did not respond. He took no action. And in my opinion, that confirms to me the truthfulness of what I thought was going on with regards to the issue of political corruption. I hate to go down this road, the road of litigation and suing people. I find it ultimately unproductive, it's expensive, and I don't agree with the excessive litigiosity that exists in some parts of the world. However, I felt it was important in my case to file a lawsuit, to make a mark in time, and to make a record as to what went on. And on March the 22nd, 2013, and I have the document here in front of me, I did file a lawsuit. I filed a lawsuit in the Superior Court of New Jersey, the Law Division in Bergen County. And it was a lawsuit filed against the group of neurosurgeons who had contributed, or I should say given money, to Mr. Christie. And their names are Robert Heery, Frank Moore, Peter Carmel, Gregory Przybylski, William Mitchell. And this document, again, will be on the video for people to review. But what the document talks about and goes into in detail are the events leading up to and surrounding the suspension and how it occurred. It talks about the turf war, it talks about the battle between the specialities, and I felt that filing the lawsuit would give my complaints a certain degree of legitimacy. When the local press, the Star Ledger, the Bergen Record, wrote their stories, in my opinion, they made a much bigger deal in the press than the case really deserved. And they brought up the case in England that I'd been involved in. And one of the details about the case in England, which again was a miscommunication by the media, was that I supposedly was on a mobile phone when I was looking after a dental patient in the UK. Now, to disprove this, I contacted my solicitor in the UK and asked him to send me the engineer's report, because during the case we had an engineer who proved and came to court that no phone was being used. And again, this report, which I have published previously, again will be on the video for people to look at their own leisure. Now, as I mentioned before, the case, or the hearing in front of Judge Solomon, lasted approximately 7 weeks, and there was a lot of testimony on both sides. The main expert witness for the state was Dr. Gregory Przybylski. Now, Dr. Gregory Przybylski is a neurosurgeon, and again, he and the other neurosurgeons who do practice in close proximity to my practice were threatened by the work that I was doing. Now, in front of me, I have a 33-page transcript, which again, obviously, I'm not going to read, but anyone who's interested in it and reads it will come to a key part of his testimony when he was cross-examined by my attorney, Charles Shaw. And in the cross-examination, he admitted, which was the key point of the case, that there were no standards for training and education in the field of minimally invasive spine surgery, which is what I had been saying all along, and which is what Charles Shaw got Dr. Przybylski to admit. Now, in an ideal world, if it was a court that had been, in my opinion, truthful, the case would have been dismissed at that point, but it wasn't. And in my opinion, it goes just again to the issue of political corruption. Now, on that day that Dr. Przybylski testified, in the courtroom was a journalist by the name of Walter Eisner. And Walter is one of the key journalists for a publication called Orthopedics This Week. And he wrote a long feature entitled Spine on Trial. And it's a fascinating article that he wrote about the battle between the neurosurgeons and the interventional pain physicians. And I'm just going to read two of the comments that were placed at the end of the article by two of the readers. Now, the first comment is from a Dr. Anthony Young, who is an orthopedic surgeon based in Arizona, who himself was one of the pioneers of the minimally invasive endoscopic approach. And he says, and I quote, "This is similar with Young versus Dickman, where Dickman testified that thermal annuloplasty had 0 chance of success for the treatment of a painful disc in a patient that had mild spondylolisthesis. Curtis Dickman lied to the court and jury by fabricating false exhibits to support his rogue testimony. After Dickman's 2-level fusion, the patient became disabled, and Dickman blamed me for the poor result. The judge in this case made an error by allowing Dickman's rogue testimony over my objection." Now, I read that to make this point, that when these battles go on in medicine, and the public naturally will have no idea or conception that this kind of thing happens in medicine, but when these battles go on, quite often legal rules are flouted, and quite often corruption plays a significant role. There is another comment on this document, and I'm going to read it because I think it's relevant from a patient's perspective. And the comment is made by the gentleman Key Darrow, who I'd referred to before. And he says, and I quote, "This case clearly is brought about by physicians being able to influence a political party to ask for and receive favors of inquisition to another doctor. Dr. Kaul has clearly delivered a health care model that is called for under the Affordable Health Care Act before it was even enacted. Since the implementation of his health care model, the cost effectiveness of his model has been very successful." Mr. Darrow then goes on to say the, quote, "good old boys club is losing money to this type of care, as well as the highly paid hospital administrators. Let this case and assault on the good character and excellent surgical skills of Dr. Richard A. Kaul show that the medical community cannot use political pressure to protect their cash cow turf. Dr. Richard A. Kaul should be acquitted, and an official apology from the Attorney General should be issued. We need more doctors like Dr. Richard A. Kaul in this world. May he be victorious in this fight." So that's an article that was written by Walter Eisner. It was one of the most widely read articles in the publication, and it talks and went to the heart of the case. Now, one of the most disturbing issues to me, and I'm sure it would be to everyone, is the fact that in my case and during the trial there was alteration of the court transcripts by the opposing parties. Now, this came to my attention only because I brought my own court transcriptionist into the court to transcribe on certain days. Had I not done this, there would have been no way that I would have found out about the alteration of transcripts. So after this came to my attention, I sent out a series of letters. I sent a letter to the judge, Judge Howard Solomon. I sent a letter to Governor Christie. I sent a letter to a gentleman called Dan McMurray. But I have here in front of me the letter that I sent to Judge Solomon. It was dated September the 12th, 2013. And I'm going to just read one part from the letter. And the letter is quote, it says, "Dear Judge Solomon, I am writing this letter as a matter of last resort to bring your immediate attention to an issue that I believe has significant relevance for the above matter and which deeply troubles me, as I am sure, having witnessed your impartial jurisprudence, it would you." And I went on to say in the letter, there are two issues of concern. One, the inconsistency of a critical part of the May 6th transcript provided by J.H. Buren compared to the transcript from Veritext, the service that I retained for certain days. And I understand the comments you made in court regarding your insistence that you would only be referring to the court-scheduled transcripts. However, in court on that same day was a senior journalist from the largest orthopedic trade publication, Walter Eisner. And in the widely read article, Spine on Trial, which I've just referenced, he specifically described the admission of Dr. Gregory Przybylski that no standards exist for education and training in minimally invasive spine surgery. This very important detail has been omitted from the court-scheduled transcript, and as I'm sure you will agree, presents a very difficult situation. I then went on to say, briefly, and I'm going to read this. It was point 2 that I made to Judge Solomon. And what I said was, there were 23 days of testimony, and there are 23 transcripts with a deadline for submission on September the 22nd, 2013. I and my attorney Charles Shaw, Esquire, are in possession of only 16 with only 10 days left. I have placed multiple calls to J.H. Buren requesting the provision of these outstanding documents and have received no response. Charles Shaw, to his great credit, has asked the New Jersey Deputy Attorney General Doreen Hafner to provide the transcripts of which she is in complete possession, and he has been consistently denied, despite the fact that it would actually help mitigate the over $1 million of taxpayers' money that has already been spent by the state of New Jersey in bringing this case. I finally say that the quality of the brief submitted on September the 23rd will be dependent on the accuracy and possession in a timely manner of all 23 of the transcripts. Of great significance is the fact that the transcript of Professor Solomon Campson, who was one of my experts, is one of the 7 missing transcripts. As I sent out these letters, and as I mentioned before, I also sent a letter to the transcription service, and again this letter will be on the video, in the video, for people to read at their own leisure. And significantly, I sent a letter to Governor Christie, and that letter was dated excuse me a moment. That letter was dated September the 26th, 2013. And again, oh sorry, the letter was dated September the 13th, 2013. And again in the letter, excuse me, again in the letter, I make the same points that I had made to Judge Solomon about the fact, which was shocking to me, that the transcripts had been altered. And as I'd said before, fortunately for me, I brought my own transcriptionist to court, which was unheard of. I sent the letter to Governor Christie, and I'm just going to read one short paragraph from the letter. And the letter says, "As I am sure you are aware, the suspension of my medical license by the New Jersey Medical Board in June 2012 in a highly publicized, and some would say politicized manner, prompted the following responses from patient groups. 1. A petition with 1,000 patient signatures and 100 letters was delivered to you personally and in your capacity as the elected official currently occupying the office of New Jersey Governor, to which there was absolutely no response. And I understand that in your official capacity you cannot be ostensibly involved, but the communication was also hand-delivered to you personally, and I cannot currently ascertain any explanation for the complete lack of response." I never received a response from Governor Christie with regards to that letter, and I found it very disquieting and disconcerting that in a democracy where these issues can be discussed openly, that the governor of this state would not respond to a letter which contained an allegation as serious as the alteration of court transcripts, which in my opinion goes to the heart of justice and fairness, and for him to not address it, to me, is of great concern. As I move through this bundle of documents, I come to a letter that I sent out on the 25th of September 2013. And it was a letter that was actually directed to one of the banks that I dealt with in New Jersey, TD Bank. And because of the suspension of my license, my life was turned upside down, financially and in every other respect. It affected me, it affected my family. And I was having problems with the bank, so I sent a letter to the group president, Mr. Masrani, who's based in Toronto. And again in the letter, I talk about my education and training and the circumstances that went on. Now, it's a 3-page letter, which again people can read, but I'm going to briefly read the conclusion that I attached to this letter. And I wrote, "There are, of course, many other details about this rather sordid affair in which TD, New Jersey, has allowed itself to become embroiled. And these will be provided as the investigation proceeds. The impact to NJSR Surgical Center has been profound, and Chris Christie is acutely aware of the attention this issue is now getting from the British media, and specifically the Telegraph. Numerous other US media outlets will be running stories about the case and the political corruption within the Christie administration." Now, this letter was sent out on September the 25th, 2013. And as I'm sure many people will be aware, Mr. Christie has been involved in a very high-profile scandal relating to the George Washington Bridge. I sent this letter out and made these allegations about Mr. Christie well before these, what I would call allegations and investigation began with the George Washington Bridge. And all I can say about that is I knew the character of the man because of what he was doing to me. In the beginning, when I started to talk about it, I must admit that most people did not give too much credence to what I was saying. It was easy to paint me out as a bitter and somewhat resentful doctor. However, I think that the Bridgegate scandal has in many ways brought to light the true character of Mr. Christie and what his administration are prepared to do to win at all costs. It's shocking. After I sent the letter to Mr. Christie on, I think it was the September the 13th, a few days later, I received a phone call from his office, and the girl introduced herself as Jamie from Governor Christie's office, and she proceeded to engage, or to try and engage in a conversation with me about the letter. I cut her short, and I told her that what she should do is go back and ask Mr. Christie himself to pick up the phone and to call me so that we can discuss the issue of transcription fraud that has gone on in my case. Because I consider that such an egregious offence that to him, or for his office, to have one of his assistants call, I felt completely unacceptable. Now, one of the issues that was brought up when my license was first suspended, and it was brought up by my attorney at that time, Mr. Robert Conroy, and this was back in June 2012. And he filed a lawsuit in Mercer County Superior Court asking for the appointment of a special prosecutor and an ad hoc medical board, because Mr. Conroy must have known something that at that time I did not know. And he knew that the case was fixed, it was rigged, it was political. I was not going to get a fair trial. And he went in to court and filed a lawsuit on June the 7th, 2012, asking for a special prosecutor and an ad hoc medical board. Now, the last time I heard of a special prosecutor being brought in was with Richard Nixon. And I must admit, it did surprise me when he did that, and I really did not understand the full implications and ramifications. But as time went by, and as I began to speak to a lot of doctors and lawyers in the state of New Jersey, and all the pieces came together, I understand why Mr. Conroy did this. I have in front of me a letter. It's dated December the 26th, 2013. And it's a letter that is addressed to Judge Solomon. And it was a letter that I sent to him after his ruling. And I'm going to read one very short paragraph to illustrate the tone of the letter and the tone of the proceedings. And what I said was, I said, "Dear Judge Solomon, I have read your almost 100-page quote ruling, which seems simply to be a regurgitation of the case put forward by Doreen Hafner, the attorney representing New Jersey, and in which you have not given any credible consideration to the thoughtful testimony provided by the many witnesses who testified on my behalf. Your ruling is so extreme that it has raised many questions with many individuals who have profound concerns about your impartiality. I still have some faith in the New Jersey legal process and in your own personal sense of fairness and transparency. I, and my many supporters, would, however, like the following questions answered." Now, I'm not going to read the questions that I asked, but the readers will be able to see this, or the viewers, for themselves on the video. more time passed by, and I ended up actually sending a letter to President Obama on January the 5th, 2014. And again, this letter will be on the video, but the opening paragraph of the letter is as follows, and I write, "Dear President Obama, I'm writing this letter to bring your attention and request the assistance of the United States government in the investigation of the commitment of illegal acts of evidence tampering and court transcript alteration, which have been brought on multiple occasions to the current governor of New Jersey, Christie. I have been forced to make this appeal to you and the federal authorities due to the continued lack of response from the Christie administration and the New Jersey Administrative Law Judge, Howard Solomon, to the multiple letters I have sent regarding the willful alteration and loss of court transcripts in the matter of New Jersey versus Dr. Richard Kaul, docket number BER-L 225613. In all my years as a physician, I never imagined that I would be in a situation like this, where I was being forced to send letters to the President of the United States asking for his assistance in a matter where legal transcripts have been altered. And the reason that I feel so aggrieved about this is because I've always held America and what it stands for in such high regard. And for this kind of conduct to go on, to me, goes to the heart of what America is about. I have in front of me further copies of the letters that I had sent out to Judge Solomon and to President Obama. And the one final letter that I would like to talk about on this video and bring the public's attention to is a letter that I sent on February the 6th, 2014 to the New Jersey Medical Board. Excuse me. And I'm going to read two paragraphs from the letter, and they are, excuse me. Dear sirs and madams, I will not be in attendance on February the 12th, 2014, for the hearing in front of the body that improperly represents itself to be the New Jersey Medical Board, because this, quote, board, as it is currently constituted, and being the board that illegally suspended my medical license in June 2012, does not and did not have the proper authority to take such action. And the first paragraph of the letter, which again the viewers can read, but I'm going to read this out because I think it's the critical paragraph. And it's entitled Unconstitutional Medical Board. And the letter says, it has recently been brought to my attention that the following individuals, despite the expiration of their legally allowed tenure on the medical board, continue to improperly act as legitimate members, taking votes against the licenses of New Jersey physicians. And I list 11 of the physicians, and then go on to say, as all board members are aware, a legal quorum is required before any valid action can be taken against the property right of a physician. And as the evidence above demonstrates, no such quorum was in place when this body, without authority, suspended my medical license in June 2012, thus rendering all decisions regarding my license invalid until the proper constitution of a legal quorum. Now this letter is of immense importance because Unbeknownst to many people, and very quietly, Governor Christie got rid of the medical board earlier in 2014, changed the medical board, replaced, I think, approximately 15 members of the medical board. It wasn't reported in the press. No one really knew about it. And so the question that I have, and many people have who I've discussed this with, is why? Why would he do such a thing? No answers have been provided, but in my estimation, I think what Mr. Christie was trying to do was cover his tracks as to the political corruption that went on with regards to my case. He has not, to this date, answered any of the letters. He has not addressed this issue, and as the governor of this state, he has an obligation to do so. Now, these are just some of the many documents that were generated through the case. And I'm not going to talk for too much longer because I think I've made a lot of the points that I feel are important. But the one thing that I would say in closing is that the injustice that was committed against me so readily and so easily can be committed against you, my fellow physicians. And if you think that you're safe or that you're immune to this kind of corruption, you're fooling yourself. These things that went on in my case can happen to anyone. And I would implore people watching this video, and particularly physicians, to take note and to make their voices heard that this kind of conduct, this kind of political corruption will not be tolerated in the state of New Jersey. Thank you.